If you are new here or don't know me, my name is Daryl Buckle. I'm one of the pastors here, and it is just so good having you with us, even if it's with a little bit of mixed emotions. What am I talking about? Of course, for the last 2 or 3 weeks, we have all been glued to our TVs watching the absolute best in the world participate in the Winter Olympics in Italy, and it has been amazing. But listen, not without controversy, am I right? Yeah, I'm not sure we're ever going to be able to sort things out with the Swedish Curling Federation after their brutal attack on our nation's 7th or 8th most popular sport. The vicious attempt to besmirch the good character of the men and women of our curling teams. That's right, I said besmirch. It was appalling. Now, listen, I know that there have been some videos floating around that might suggest some truth to the accusations made against all of us as Canadians, and I won't dignify that with a response. If you missed it, for the last few weeks, we have also been working our way through a series on the book of Nehemiah in the Bible. And I want to invite you all back to that part of what we're going to talk about today. Last week, we talked about how good people collaborated together to accomplish what can only be accomplished as a shared vision. Of course, referring to the repair and the rebuilding of the walls around Jerusalem after a season of exile and isolation from their homeland. We read Nehemiah's inspiring speech in chapter 2, verse 17. We read about the people's courageous reply, "Let us start rebuilding," and indeed they began the good work. And if you were here for it or caught it online last week, we actually read through chapter 3 of Nehemiah. We celebrated all the good people and all the good work that good people did together. And while I may have neglected to tell you the other thing that happened in Nehemiah chapter 2, of course, I'm talking about what happened right after Nehemiah's inspirational speech. If you're tracking with us, it's found in verse 19 of chapter 2. It says, "But when Sanballat the Horonite, Tobiah the Ammonite official, and Geshem the Arab heard about it, they mocked and ridiculed us. 'What is this you are doing?' they asked. 'Are you rebelling against the king?' Are you rebelling against the... Can you believe it? How dare you, sir? Besmirch the good name of Nehemiah, cupbearer to the king. How dare... Okay. But before you get all outraged and amped up, before you wind yourself up with how dare you, sirs, and besmirch this and besmirch that, think through all of the stories you know in the scriptures. Name one person in the Bible who did anything significant without someone trying to stop them. Yeah, Moses had Pharaoh. David had Saul. Jesus had the Pharisees. Paul had, all sorts of different people who were against him. Hope you know this. Experiencing obstacles and opposition doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. Opposition and obstacles just mean you're doing something. The moment the wall started going up, the enemies of progress or just the enemies of change started showing up. And it's not because the wall was bad, because the wall was good. It's not because Nehemiah was bad. It might have just been because Nehemiah was new. Like, he had only been there for 3 days, and all this hullabaloo started to rise around them. That's right, I also said hullabaloo. So you're taking notes, besmirch, hullabaloo. Pastor bingo today is going to be exciting. Some might say this is actually how you tell if what you're doing matters, right? You count the people trying to stop you. Because if there's zero opposition, maybe it means there's zero threat. If no one cares enough to resist, you're probably not building anything worthy of defense. And so we can read by this story. Nehemiah's wall attracted all sorts of attacks, all kinds of opposition. And the test isn't whether everyone agrees with you. You know that, right? Yeah, the test is how well you endure opposition, how well you keep moving forward despite opposition. Remember, Jesus himself said, "Beware when all men speak well about you." Because sometimes it's when people hate you, or when they exclude you, or insult you, or reject your name as evil, Jesus says it's then that you are most blessed. And so in Nehemiah chapter 3, they put their hands to the good work. They started to rebuild the wall around Jerusalem. And now we're talking about Nehemiah chapter 4. If you have a Bible, go ahead and flip there. You can open it up in the Bible app, find the notes. Nehemiah chapter 4, let me read it for you while you're turning. When Sanballat heard that we were rebuilding the wall, he became angry and was greatly incensed. He ridiculed the Jews. And in the presence of his associates in the army of Samaria, he said, "What are those feeble Jews doing? Will they restore their wall? Will they offer sacrifices? Are they going to finish in a day? Can they bring the stones back to life from those heaps of rubble, burned as they are?" And Tobiah the Ammonite, who was at his side, said, what they're building, even a fox climbing up on it would break down their wall of stones. Nehemiah's response in verse 4, "Hear us, our God, for we are despised. Turn their insults back on their own heads. Give them over as a plunder in a land of captivity. Do not cover up their guilt or blot out their sins from your sight, for they have thrown insults in the face of the builders." And then verse 6 says, "So we rebuilt the wall till all of it reached half its height, for the people worked with all of their heart." So I want to add to something I said last week. I'll repeat it for those of you who missed. Whenever you imagine for yourself a bigger and a better future, you need to understand that getting there will almost always require a community of collaborators around you. You remember that part? Part 2. And so you're not surprised. Somewhere along the way, while you were working away at your dream, I can almost guarantee that you will encounter the opposition of genuine bridge trolls. Y'all know what bridge trolls are? Yeah, bridge trolls are the people who try to stop good people like you from getting to where you are now to where you need to go in order to grow. And you know, you're looking at me with that look. I know some of you still naively question the existence of bridge trolls. I am telling you, they exist. Like, I've been in ministry long enough, I got enough scars to show you. Dragons, bridge trolls, all of it. It's all true. But also heroes and healers and loyal friends. And the point is this, just don't be surprised when it happens. Yeah, don't be surprised when it happens. Because opposition is predictable. That's what I want you to know. But opposition doesn't have to be terminal. It's absolutely inevitable, but it in no way is insurmountable. Opposition doesn't determine the outcome. If you're taking notes, I hope you get that. It doesn't determine the outcome. What you do when you're faced with it, that's what determines or defines the outcome. So let's talk about that for a couple minutes. What does opposition look like? What is the face of opposition? They say that laughter is the best medicine unless they're laughing at you. So in 1934, the new Nazi government enacted a law in Germany called the Law Against Treacherous Attacks on the State, which made laughing and telling jokes about the regime a capital offense. True story. They put none other than Joseph Goebbels, the head of the Ministry of Propaganda and People's Enlightenment, in charge of enforcing it. You may have heard of him before. A chamber of culture was established to control all the work of all creative artists, including comedians, I'm not making this up, to ensure that they promoted the ideology of the party. Yeah, in fact, you have maybe in your memory some of the cartoons the Nazis published to mock the Jews and to further their message of hate against Jews. You may have also seen, though, how despite the law against it, others used humor as a form of resistance against Nazi Germany. Why? Because humor can be a powerful tool, right? When you need to speak truth or you want to speak truth to power, it's a powerful tool. When you need to right-size leaders who are maybe getting a little too big for their britches or need to be brought down a peg or two, humor can be great for that. Humor can shine a light when the message is absurd, right? It can shine a light on that, but it can also be used as a weapon, friends, to oppose or to tear down the weak or the vulnerable. And so that's why I wanted to slip into this message, just a simple warning. Please be careful when sharing internet funnies. At very least, check your sources before you share that stuff. But be careful, because it's one thing to speak up, but it's another thing to tear people down. And the scriptures, you might not be surprised to know, are actually filled with the prayers of people on the receiving end of mocking and ridicule. In Revelation, the prayers of people are described as incense, which is forever pervasive around the throne of God. That means that the throne of God is constantly surrounded by the prayers of people on the receiving end of mocking and ridicule. How about Psalm 22, verse 6 through 8? I am a worm and not a man, scorned by everyone, despised by the people, and all who see me mock me, and they hurl insults, shaking their head. Lamentations 3:14, I became the laughing stock of all my people. They mock me in song all day long. Can you imagine that? Being mocked in song? Daryl and Luana sitting in a tree. Wait a second, I love that song. That's like one of my favorites. Henry Bergson, in an essay called Laughter, talked about how humor can be used politically, unifying an in-group through laughter while simultaneously targeting and marginalizing an out-group. Here's the quote: to bring together one community in order to destroy the other. Yeah, it's not just Nehemiah though, is it? Everyone I know has experienced this. Talking about junior high, right? Honestly, I know people who are still scarred by the cruelty of junior high joking. It's not a laughing matter when it's used as a weapon to tear down. And it is in this story. When Nehemiah heard that we were rebuilding the wall, he became angry and was greatly incensed. He ridiculed the Jews, it said. And in the presence of his associates in the army of Samaria, he said, what are those feeble Jews doing? Will they restore the wall? Will they offer sacrifice? Will they finish in a day? Could they bring the stones back to life from those heaps of rubble, burned as they are? And then Tobiah the Ammonite, it says, who was at his side. Oh, you got to beware the sidekicks. He says, what are they building? Even a fox climbing on it would break down their wall of stones. Good one, Biff. Nehemiah's cause, remember, was innocent. It was innocent. Nehemiah shows up thinking, no, this is a good thing that I'm doing, right? It's noble. It might even be righteous. But he still faced opposition. He still faced mockery. What does that mean? You might too. You might too. When you're trying to do something good and noble, with good intention, maybe even a call from God, you might too. It wasn't just insult and mockery. Nehemiah also faced real accusations. And some of these might actually sound familiar to you. In Nehemiah 2:19, they attack Nehemiah's motives. He's accused of rebellion against. Why are you building this wall? Oh, you're just rebelling against the king. What is this thing you're doing? Are you rebelling, they ask? They're attacking his motive. They frame the building of the wall as political treason. Yeah, the truth is that they had the king's blessing, remember, if you're new. They had letters, they had lumber, they had supplies. Remember, all of it was authorized, but that doesn't matter to those who are making accusations against Nehemiah and against the builders. And isn't that the danger of accusations? They don't even have to be true. Whether they're true or not, it's what scientists call illusory truth effect. I've talked about this before. In 1992, a study in the Journal of Experimental Psychology showed that people are more likely to believe something is true the more they hear it, even if they rejected it the first time they heard it. Yeah, that means the more you hear a lie, the more it becomes believable, because cognitive fluency, you just get more and more used to it. You think, oh, well, it sounds like it could be true. It sounds like it must be true. Yeah, it's not. That's the danger in accusations. Nehemiah chapter 4, verse 1 through 3, they attack your abilities. Let's put you in the story. They attack your abilities. You're accused of incompetence and attacked as fool. What are those feeble Jews? Like, maybe if it was us, we could build the wall, but those feeble Jews, not them. Will they finish in a day? It's been lying in rubble for years. Will they finish in a day? Are they going to revive the stones out of the heaps of rubbish? This is an ad hominem attack. Maybe you've heard that before. This is where someone attempts to win an argument by attacking the person instead of the argument itself. It's like Shane, if he comes here and stands up and he said, we should rebuild the wall. And you go, what do you know? You're a Bills fan. And I didn't know if that was a good one or not, because I don't really watch a lot of football, and I don't know if Shane's a Bills fan, actually, but that's what an ad hominem attack is. Instead of arguing that, well, you know, Shane, building a wall will be difficult, you attack the people doing the work. You want the people doing the work to doubt their worth or their character or their abilities. Maybe you've heard this before, sticks and stones can break your bones, but words might tear your heart out. That's why this is so dangerous. Let's keep going. Nehemiah chapter 6, 5 through 7. Nehemiah is attacked publicly, accused of planning a revolt. So Sanballat actually sends an open letter, which means things are kind of escalating from mere slander, when you trash talk and you speak lies, to libel. You know what libel is? Libel is when it's written down or published in a more lasting or permanent form. You have to imagine Sanballat says, I'm going to post an official Facebook public accusation about Nehemiah and try to do damage to him, whether it's true or not. Listen to what this letter said. It says, it is reported among the nations, and Geshem says it's true, that you and the Jews plan to rebel. That is why you are building this wall. According to these reports, I didn't make this up, but according to the reports, you are about to become their king. You have also appointed prophets to make this proclamation about you in Jerusalem. There is a king in Judah. And then to put a little cherry on top of it, he says, now you know this report will get back to the king, so come let us meet together. So they accuse Nehemiah of sedition, self-promotion, listen, spiritual manipulation. They accused him of hiring prophets to add spiritual weight to his project that wasn't there according to them, and they threatened to undermine him by calling his boss or the board chair, saying, I'm going to tell your mama about you. I'm going to call Mima if you don't stop this. Nehemiah, you know this is going to get back to the king, and if it does, the implication, your career is over. Yeah, it's over. Nehemiah chapter 6, verse 10, it keeps going. This is also a tough one. Nehemiah is accused of cowardice in an accusation that's actually defined to cultivate fear. What's this story? Nehemiah goes to visit Shemaiah, who is described as shut in his home. Now, it doesn't tell us why. We don't know if he's sick, and so he's a shut-in from sickness, or old age, because he just doesn't have the knees to get around. Maybe he's just a bit of a hermit or an introvert who's quite happy reading his books at home, right, Luana? Not that my wife's a hermit, everybody. I'm just saying, we don't know the story. He could have just been a mysterious prophet, somebody who kept out of public eye until he had to step forward to speak. But the rest of the story implies that he might have been shut in out of fear because of the threat of an imminent attack by the enemies of Jerusalem. Shemaiah says, let us meet in the house of God inside the temple, and let us close the temple doors, because men are coming to kill you. And then he repeats it, by night. Ooh, scared of the dark. They are coming to kill you. Nehemiah smells something and thinks, maybe this is all just theater, right? Maybe it's worse than theater. Maybe it's actually a setup. In verse 12, he says, I realized that God had not sent him, but that he had prophesied against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. Can you believe it? Verse 13, he had been hired to intimidate me so that I would commit a sin by doing this, and then they would give me a bad name to discredit me. I want to say a couple words about this. It reminded me of 1 Timothy chapter 5, when Paul warns Timothy about those who get into the habit of being idle and going about from house to house. And not only do they become idlers, but also busybodies who talk nonsense, saying things they ought not to. Those are Paul's words. He repeats a similar message in 2 Thessalonians. He makes this other warning. He says, we hear that some among you are idle and disruptive. They are not busy, they are busy bodies. Sounds like Paul's seen this a time or two, right? What's the point? Beware armchair quarterbacks. Yeah, I've heard this is true. I've seen this in my ministry. Often the guy who isn't rowing is the one who's got time to rock the boat. Isn't that true? Paul recognized the danger of sidling idly on the sidelines where others are on the wall stacking bricks. It's not just that you miss out on an opportunity to be part of something incredible that God is doing. You actually miss out on that incredible opportunity to be part of a community of people whose hearts are actually getting knit together as they join hands and work together on something good. Now, we don't know if Shemaiah was a busybody. We don't. We don't know why he sold out. But you probably know some people are actually just addicted to causing drama. Don't elbow your spouse right now or don't nod your head. There are people who are just addicted to causing drama. There are just disruptive people who are always stirring the pot, always causing conflict in relationships. I'm just saying, if Shemaiah was too old to stack bricks, he should have joined Hananiah and served drinks. That one's free. That was from last week. All right, let's review. Whenever you imagine for yourself a bigger or better future and you go to work building it, you should expect opposition. That's everybody. You should expect opposition. Nehemiah and the builders were mocked. They were accused of political rebellion and incompetence and foolish ambition. They were accused of treason and self-promotion, cowardice, and even spiritual abuse. It was exhausting. Remember, if it's a 52-day build, all of this is happening in a matter of weeks. It would have been exhausting. The more progress they made, the more anger they seemed to stir up, and mockery and threats and intimidation and discouragement. It had to have been exhausting to be criticized, and even when the threats escalated, to feel genuine fear, to say, is this getting worse? Is this going crazy? And remember, all of it was designed to stop the work of good people like you by bridge trolls who attack your character and your credibility and besmirch your good name. So what should we do then, Buckle? What should our strategy be when we face opposition or accusation? I know some people, when they face opposition or accusation, they respond by building this mental movie in their heads of a complete disaster. One person questions your decision and you go telling everybody. Everybody thinks you're incompetent. One setback and you conclude the whole thing's falling apart. One person accuses you and you predict, my reputation's over. Yeah, I'm talking about catastrophizing. I know some of you out there struggle with this. Catastrophizing turns a speed bump into a cliff, right? That's what it does. And in Nehemiah chapter 4, verse 10, one of the builders actually did this. Let me read it for you. The strength of those who bear burdens is failing. There's just too much rubble. We are not able to build this wall. Do you notice the logic? We're tired. Man, that's true. They had to be tired. There's debris everywhere. Oh, that part's true. Therefore, it's impossible. Wait. That's not true. That part's not true at all. Nehemiah's response, listen, he never denied the fatigue that they were feeling. He was feeling it too. He didn't ignore the rubble. How could you? It was everywhere. But he refused to let two real problems become one imagined conclusion. And that's what catastrophizing does. But the truth is, catastrophizing often stops building because of problems you haven't happened yet. That's the danger in it. And if this is you, let me give you a tactic or a strategy. If you struggle with this, and you're like, Daryl, don't pick on me. I just have a hard time with worry. Listen, me too sometimes. This is you. Here's a strategy. This is what I want you to do next time you're tempted to catastrophize. Test the story that you're telling yourself. First, ask, what actually happened? These are the facts. Be honest about it. Write them down, journal, whatever. What actually happened? And then ask, what am I predicting will happen? Those aren't the facts. That part's the fiction, because it hasn't happened yet. Unless, of course, you allow it to write the end of the story. And here's a principle I want you to know. Most catastrophes die in the gap between those two questions, right? What actually happened and what am I predicting will happen? Strategy number 2, this is one Nehemiah actually used. You can ignore them. Hey, you can always just ignore it. You really can. Nehemiah chapter 6, verse 2-3. Sanballat and Geshem, as you know, sent 5 invitations to meet in the villages of the plain of Ono. This wasn't diplomacy. I know Christians are told, hey, you gotta put in the work and do the diplomacy and, practice peacemaking and have conversations and whatever. This wasn't diplomacy. It was distraction. This wasn't diplomacy. It was distraction. Nehemiah's response, I'm sorry, I can't come to the phone right now. But if you leave your name and number, I promise you, I will never call you back because I'm busy. I got important things to do. And he hangs up the phone. That's kind of the response in my mind. 4 times they sent the same message, and 4 times Nehemiah gave the exact same answer. No new explanation, no different defense. Why? Same clarity and same focus. Because they knew that the work they're doing was righteous. And he knew that this was just a tactic of distraction. I said 5 times earlier. 4 times, no response. The 5th time, they threatened to call the manager. Okay, Karen. Some of you are like, yeah, Daryl, this is getting exhausting. Like all this opposition, all this thing. This is supposed to be like a Rocky montage. Chapter 3 was exciting, Daryl. They were building the wall and having drinks and building community. Yeah, and then all this opposition. And some of you are getting worked up by all this opposition. This is one of the tactics you could take. When opposition comes, you can always drop the gloves and fight someone. Yeah, Nehemiah 4:14 captures Nehemiah's response to all of this. This is what it sounds in my mind. I am William Wallace, and I see a whole army of countrymen here in defiance of tyranny. You have come to fight as free men, and free men you are. What will you do without freedom? Will you fight? Aye. Fight and you may die. Run and you'll live, at least a while. Dying in your beds many years from now. Would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance to come back here and tell our enemies, do you know this one? That they may take our lives, but they will never take our freedom. Okay, so I'm not William Wallace, clearly. Nehemiah kind of does this a little bit. Nehemiah 4:14, he quiets the noise. He's trying to calm the fear around him, and he gives this speech. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome, and fight for your brothers and your sons and your daughters and your wives and your homes. Okay, listen. As Shane mentioned, as some of you will learn in the membership class, for those of us trying to walk the narrow way of peace as we follow Jesus, there's some tension in this text this morning. Listen, and I know as much as you, when you're in a situation of opposition, when you're told a story of great opposition like in the movies, I know how tempting it is to bite back and to fight back, right? You want to, as things escalate, return insult for insult. Was that okay if you're a pacifist? Can you still mock people back? I don't know. Insult for insult, or lie for lie, or eye for eye, and you escalate. You might even arm yourself. Friends, just because someone opposes you doesn't make them your enemy. Let me trace this for you. Nehemiah chapter 2:10 is where this starts. Sanballat and Tobiah are described as displeased officials. That doesn't sound so bad. Nehemiah 2:19, they jeered at and despised us. But listen, still, they're only just mockers, critics, and haters. Nehemiah 4:1, things are escalating to real anger. But it's not until Nehemiah 4:7 and 8, when Sanballat and Tobiah and the Arabs and the Ammonites and the Ashdodites heard that the repairing of the walls of Jerusalem were going forward, that the breaches were beginning to be closed, and they were very angry. And it says, and they all plotted together to come and fight against Jerusalem and to cause confusion in it. And you're thinking, Daryl, this is getting serious. It's actually here where the language of enemies is first used in Nehemiah. Nehemiah 4:11, and our enemies said, they will not know or see until we come upon them and kill them and stop the work. Here's what you need to know about that. This is all part of the self-talk of the catastrophizer. This is the story he was telling himself. Do you see how that works? In verse 12, emotions are escalating. Apparently, the horse is out of the barn. Fear starts to spread like grass fire. Verse 12 says, then the Jews who lived near us, they'd heard all this rumor, all this hubbub and hullabaloo, all these threats and words, all the chatter. The Jews who lived near us came and told us 10 times over. Nehemiah, are you hearing what we're hearing? Things seem to be escalating around us. The word 10 times over, wherever you turn, they will attack us. Attack us. Friends, just because someone opposes you doesn't make them your enemy. Just because they're your enemy doesn't mean you have to fight them. Doesn't mean you have to fight them. In verse 13, this is where Nehemiah kind of relents. Like, first he encourages people. He says, keep the faith and stand your ground. And then he stations some of the people at the most vulnerable parts of the project, the most exposed parts of the city. And yes, he arms them. Now, if you're new to Pathway, we are, as Shane said, part of a family of churches in the Anabaptist tradition. And what that means is that we long for and we try to practice a theology of peace and nonviolence. I need to name the tension in this passage, put William Wallace aside for a second, and say I want to be very careful this morning not to glorify a version of courage that would call people to take up arms at the first sign of threat. I do want to call people to practice the courage it takes to invite others to do the work of peace, even in an unjust world. Peace is a narrow way, and it can be hard to find. Admittedly, it can be hard to find and hard to imagine when you see what's going on in the world around you. This morning, I just want to echo the warning of Jesus. Be careful what weapons you choose in this life. As Jesus said, he who lives by the sword dies by the sword. And Jesus' message of peace, listen, admittedly, it asks hard questions of those who would walk on that narrow way. I've heard them all, and they're hard. Is the commitment to peace, Daryl, absolute and unconditional, or are there limits? Does peace theology, doesn't it just invite invaders or oppressive regimes to act with total impunity against those who refuse to fight back? Daryl, when is a commitment to peace just a moral cover for ignoring abuse or atrocities that are happening around you? Daryl, does a commitment to non-resistance create a whole community of bystanders who watch in silence as violence and injustice are inflicted on the weak? These are hard questions. They're very hard questions, and honest Christians invite hard questions because hard questions forge humility, and they forge a more resilient faith. And I can tell you, in the history of the Anabaptist movement, there are times when we got peace right. And there are some times when we got peace wrong. Joanna Van Wyck-Boss, in her commentary on Nehemiah, acknowledges the prudence of arming the builders. There's some prudence to that. a show of strength for those accused of being weak. The personal benefit of saying, maybe we're not weak. We're not just going to roll over. So maybe there's benefit to that. What about a sign of readiness for those on the outside looking in, looking for a crack in their morale, looking for a weakness, an opportunity that they can exploit? It's a sign of readiness to say, we're not faltering in our vision. We're going to keep building, keep doing the things of God. But she also notes this, and I hope you notice, the attack never came. The attack never came. All that fear turned out to be empty words, which led her to ask, and this is the commentator, was it all just theater? Was the arming and the swords and the trowel in one hand and the sword in the other, was that all just theater? I don't know. I'm not qualified to say. But Nehemiah, we know, refused to get swept away by the conflict. Do you see that? He didn't put down his trowel and take up his sword. He didn't get swept away by the conflict. He kept his people focused on the shared vision. He kept them building and motivated and moving on the good work that God had given them. And that, friends, is ultimately what made the difference. That's what made the difference. So the strategy I would love to encourage for you as we read through Nehemiah, and listen, I'm not ignorant to the time in this world that we're living in. I want to encourage you to walk the narrow way, the Jesus way. And that's what I want to leave you with this morning. Whenever you imagine for yourself a bigger and a better future, you go to work building it, you should expect to encounter opposition. It's the same. Whenever you commit your life to following Jesus, to seek and to walk in the narrow way of peace, it's going to be hard. You will face challenges to this good intention that you have to walk in the way of peace. You're going to face challenges. You're going to face anger and conflict and hate, all of the injustices of war. And for all that's going on in the world around us, not just in our own neighborhoods, but in maybe the places where some of you call home. All that is asking very difficult questions of those who would follow Jesus. What's the right response? What should we do? You may not always know the right answer. It's okay to say, I don't know the right answer. But don't stop building. What do I mean by that? Jesus in Luke 6 said to those who are listening, man, if we could just still keep our ears and our eyes focused on Jesus, to those who are listening, I say, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who ill-treat you. I hope you, as Christians, those who walk the narrow way, you'll still confront evil, that you'll reject and resist injustice, that you won't give in to fear, that you will love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, that you will try as much as you can find the will and the way to love your neighbor as yourself. And in that way, I pray that you'll pick up your cross and walk the narrow way. Let's pray. God, our hearts and our hopes are focused on you. For some of us, this is actually a tough message. Maybe some of us are going through seasons of opposition or accusation or mocking or ridicule. Some of us are carrying around the wounds of that reality to life. God, I pray that you would heal their hearts, that you would help them to keep their eye on you and to make decisions every day to choose the way of peace, but also to work for peace. As long as there's still breath in their bodies, to work for peace. And what does that mean, working for peace? Practicing the practices of peace, forgiveness, grace, patience, putting aside fear. God, teach us the way of peace when we face opposition, so that we might reflect a better way, the way of Jesus, to a watching world. We pray this in your name, Jesus. Amen.